My name is Burlakov Daniil, and I'm a head of recommendation products groups at Yandex.Music. Today I will talk about feature engineering and for cold start music recommendations. So let's start with a simple question. How many of you knows what Yandex is? So it's quite a few. So let's briefly talk. Yandex started as a search engine in Russia and become very big company that make a lot of services. So a couple of them here. In reality, there is much more services that we do. And by now we have 4 services that are already launched in Israel. And about one of these services, it's music, I will talk to you today. So the next question: what is Yandex.Music? It's quite typical, and you may heard that Yandex is often called as Russian's Google, and then Yandex.Music would be Russian Spotify. Yeah, exactly. So we are the top music streaming service in Russia. Users love us for our recommendations, and we are working hard to make it even better.
How many users do you have?
We have more than 1 million, 2 million subscribers. That's our main goal, and because subscribers, these only people who pay us money. And now we have quite 10 millions like this. I don't remember the last number, so it would be nice after. And we have a great team making all our recommendations magic. So then, what projects do we do? The first one, our main products line, it's smart playlists. For example, playlist of the day, it contains the best tracks for you for this day. It's a couple of hours of music, and you can download it with you and have music for a full day with you. It's quite nice. Deja Vu, it's some kind of discovery playlist. It contains tracks that are similar to your favorite tracks, but you don't know even artists of their tracks. So they're quite similar to yours, and you don't know artists of these tracks. And the premiere is just a personalized collection of novelties which you are waiting for. The second part is radio. It's endless stream of music that you can launch. Its main difference from the playlists, it's highly interactive. Every single action what you do here, so you can play a track, so you listen to the end. You can skip it, like it, or dislike it. Every action would be used to the next track recommendation in the stream. The second part, we have a lot of radios. So we have more than 100 radios, and we have radios by artists for your mood or activity, for example, music for a workout. So let's quick speak about recommendation systems we have. It's quite simple. We have a user, for example you, that's trying to get your new playlist of the day. Then this request comes to our backends. We are extracting using user history, all his data you have about him. By this history, making candidates and features by them, and all of this data we push to our main machine learning framework called CantBoost. It's gradient boosting algorithm. So it's quite simple. The main part of this, what features do we using? It's main part of this picture. So, of course, we have two main groups of features. The first group is either history factors, is just statistics by user, what tracks do he listens, likes, dislikes, genres, and so on. And collaborative filtering factors, it's various similarity models and factorization predicting. I wouldn't list all features that we are using because there are more than 1,000, so it would be quite long if I would list all of them. So let's talk about what I would main part talking about today. So first cold start challenges. The first one is cold user. It's just call new users on our service. It's very important to make good recommendations for new users because the retention are very low. We have more greater recommendations, the more retention we got, and so the more of them become subscribers of us. And the second part, it's not so obvious. It's called content. It's new releases, local music, and just rare tracks and artists. We don't have any or very few feedback on them. Let's start with first. It's simpler, as you will see. So let's make a first solution. If we need to recommend something to a new user, let's recommend nothing. Just ask about he or she preferences. And we have these wonderful wizards on our website and application where user can select favorite genres and artists. And after that, you will get your first playlist, and it would be good already because it's personalized. Unfortunately, wizards hard to use in some situations. Imagine you sitting in a car. You probably do not want to fill some wizards, press a lot of buttons. You want one button, just play my music, make me happy. So we have the second one solution. It's just start with recommendations for the average user. So the majority of users would be happy from the first tracks, and the least part of our users would be happy in the next tracks because we provide a very fast personalization. As I said here about radio, where we use this model, we provide a very interactive model for the radio, so every action obtained in real time, and so it's quite good here. So by this time we nearly solved solution with cold start users. So of course you can improve the solutions and we make a lot of more, but in general it's solved here. So let's try in some analogy for the cold content. Let's start with our first approach. Do not recommend it. Why? It's a normal solution. Do not recommend cold content while it would not be cold. All recommender systems work here. But for us it's not applicable, just because we have a main part that a lot of users like and really like novelties, and if you would miss them it would be bad. Just because if you have a new release of your favorite artist and you don't get it in recommendations, it's not good recommendations. And the second part, we are launching in the new countries. And launch in new country without local music recommendations, it's a bad launch. By this time, so first solution is really not working for us. The second solution was to recommend for average person. Here it would be for average song, but already you may understand that it's not clear what average song means. And of course, local music is very different in different countries. So our both solutions are not applicable here anymore. So let's think that what we have about our called content. The first thing you may know about is metadata. It's genre, performer, album, release year. It's words that we are using when we talk about music between humans. And of course we have all this data from our copyright holders. And of course, as I said, we use this information in statistics and so on. So the number of tracks that you are listening in this particular genres, we have these statistics, of course. But it's not quite easy to use. Let's start with genre. The concept of genre is quite subjective because many of you knows only 10, maybe 20 genres that you can remember. But copyright holders send us more than 1,000 of genres. It's quite hard to match them and match this small difference between those genres. And the second problem here that we cannot do a good personal recommendations if we know only genres about tracks, of course. There is a lot of tracks in pop, rap, and so on. It can be very different. And the last one, despite this extensive genre categorization, we have a lot of mistakes. Electronic gets into jazz, Caucasian music gets into folk, and so on. I want you to guess what genres of the next tracks that I would play here would be. What you want to say about this track?
Metadata.
What?
Metadata.
You're right! It's metal. Maybe you know the group? No. Yeah, it's Apocalypse. But for most of you, of course, you wouldn't say that it's what metal. This particular track. Of course, group is metal. And we have this track as metal. So, we see what problems we have with genres, but let's talk about performer. It's much more straightforward information. There would not be any mistake, of course. A little problem here, it's not a good information for the local performer. We got a cold track connection to a cold artist. We have this connection, but it's very hard to use in recommendation. And of course, as I said, there is no errors. No, it's not true. The next two tracks would have same title and same artist listed on them. It's first track and second. Yeah, as here written, it's original track and it's remix. But maybe on purpose, maybe it's mistake of copyright holders, they not shown the remix group here, just the same title and same artist. And in Wizard, you may click, for example, on the composers. And for example, we have a composer Mozart that you may heard about. And this composer listed on more than 1 million track. What recommendations would you get after your click? So you should be quite accurate with this data. So as we heard in last talk, let's talk about cumulative filtering and particularly singular value decomposition. As in last talk, we have a matrix. By lines we have users, by columns we have tracks. On intersection of user and track we have a feedback of user, like this track or not. Small difference from the last talk, we have a dense matrix where in every So we have 0 if user don't like track, and if it not interact with track, we have 0 in this cell, and 1 if user interact with this track and like it. And we have the second matrix as weights, as how we sure that this true, that user will not like this track or likes this track. It's called implicit ILS in literature. So, not matter what matrix factorization you use, after this technique you would get an embedding for user and embedding for track. It's small dimensional vectors. That's very useful. What are we getting here? We get a natural similarity between tracks, because now we have a vector for each track and we can measure similarity between them just measuring distance between these vectors. And it's very useful when you're making recommendations, because you can recommend the similar tracks to user or to user likes, for example. And it's meaningful. Embedding, it's very important. And as it's small dimensional vector, it's very simple to use in recommendations. So it's very nice. But unfortunately, nothing will work if no one listened to this particular track or artist. We have no SVT vector for it. And here I make a small plot where I showed that a popularity of performers, artists, are quite have a long tail, because if you watch at most popular performers, we see that there are a lot of users that listen here, more than millions. But if we go to the 15,000 performer here, it would be a 100. It's too small. Imagine how many streams on tracks of such performer would be. Its SVT vector would be quite unstable, and we cannot use it in recommendations. So, what we want to do? We have new array songs, and we say that SVT vector is very useful, it's very simple, it's quite nice. So, we forgot about the main part of music, the music itself. So, we want here get music on one side and get SVT vector from other side. So, let's start with audio. This is typical picture how audio is viewing in computers. As you know, music is just waves of compression and decompression. You can measure, for example, pressure or some other physical parameters for a particular point, and then you can make a lot of points for this data. And then we've got these graphics. The first one is for this music. It's quite simple music. Okay, we have for the up line we have that we have 15 parts of our track, for example. If we zoom a little bit, the last line is just 10 milliseconds. We have 5 like a sinus waves in 10 milliseconds. The first thing you think when you saw such picture, you think about Fourier transform. You want to know how much energy contains in such waves. So the first thing that we will do is just make a spectrum from this track. And spectrum here is quite simple. As you see, it was a piano that played one musical note and other, and we have a quite simple picture here showing that it's right to use it here. But here we have a small problem. Imagine you have an image and you only thing you know about it, it contains some part of red, some part of green, and some part of blue. The same here. We have in some part of this track these musical notes, in some part this, in some part of this. Even we will know how long it was. So spectrum is not nice to represent music. Much more useful here is spectrogram. It is the same as track. We would have a sliding window on our track. For each sliding window we would make the same thing. And then we see that the upper is just a sound of pressing button. The second line is our music notes that I show on last slide. And you may notice there is a lot of other speaks. It's just from the physics. When you have a string and you have a main note here, you would get a double frequency, triple frequency, and so on. It's just quite simple. It's very nice to represent music. You can already see it. So let's make a simple example here. Remember I show you tracks that was metal, but it's not so quite metal. Can you predict what from these two tracks it would be? Up or down? Down? No. For example, here we have a lot of basses. And here we have a quite clear picture where we see a particular notes one by one. So we have multiple cells that was in those metal track. We have a lot of clean picture. And metal it would be quite a lot of basses. And for example here we have a woman's scream. You quite clear see it here. So we show that spectrogram is quite nice to represent music. What we do to extract a 3D vector? We make the simplest thing possible. We apply convolutional neural network upon it. So small remark here that we should learn 3D vectors only on stable 3D tracks, where we have a lot of feedbacks, because for less popular text we have unstable vectors. It's not quite useful to learn this. So the architecture is quite simple. We've got a spectrogram, work with it like an image. So using convolutional layers here, it allows us to make shifts in time. It's one of the main parts we should do in music, and allows us to make shifts in frequencies. That allows us to match the same melody by play it on different octaves and so on. So it's quite useful representation here. After that we got a max pooling by time, so we have no problems with different types of music. And after that we got then some dense layers. The last of that would predict now S3. So results. What we get after applying this in production. The main thing we want from this feature that we could recommend more novelties, and we doubled the number. But there is, if we want to check only this particular property, it's quite simple. If you're making recommendations, you just may play more novelties. But of course, you would lose other properties of your recommendation. The main one is retention, is how our users are returning to our service, and it's rising by more than 1%. The second property is playtime per day. It's quite simple, but it's very hard to obtain. Just because the user have limited time in day, and if you want to that he or she spent in your service longer, it means that in other places he would spend less time, for example, less sleeping. And the last one, but I think it's more important, in dislikes. As I said in writing all our service, you can say that recommendations is not good. You can play button dislike. And we have lowered this number by almost 8%. So it's quite nice. But it's only features. Let's start with some true example. There would be 2 tracks. The first one are quite popular. It's maybe a couple of thousands users listen them. And the second one will be much less popular. And I would you to guess what track is the first one. And the second one. What do you think? The first one is more popular. Any other ideas? No? All of you think that the first is more popular? Yeah, you're right. The first track is much more popular, but I think it's quite similar tracks, and it would be a good recommendation for ones that listen to the first track and like the first track to recommend the second track is quite nice. And because so little feedback that we have on the second track, we cannot recommend it before. So now we have a great opportunity to recommend new and rare music. And we have a lot of feedbacks from our users that wrote us about our playlists that they are quite nice and they really contain music they don't know and they loved it. And we have some papers wrote some words about us after launching, for example, in Israel. The last but not least, you can explore your own playlist of the day. What you need to do for it? The first one you should for it download our application. The second part is just not simple. Our designers at work. You should to press for the heart and it's called My Music. Then to the people, it's just My Profile. And there you would find enter Git code place where you can enter Yandex.Music, and after that you would got a 3-month subscription for free. Okay, the slides would be with you. And thank you. I'm happy to answer your questions if you have some.
You use convolutional neural network to embed the song.
What we are using for embedding, and we are using from Spectrogram. We use convolutional neural network. After that, we have max pooling and quite dense layers. And the last output of these dense layers we use as our embedding.
Yeah, it's like an embedding vector representing the song.
Yeah.
And you just look at a specific user and what he likes, and then you choose the vector that the distance from what he heard is the minimal. Right?
Yes, of course. As I said, there is a lot of features, and this particular feature there is features from average user vectors. So the last likes of user set, we select the last like of this user and measure distance to this. We have a lot of such factors, and all of these factors came into our gradient booting at Boost, after which we got quite good results.
But this is the main method you use, right? You embed features, then you look what's the distance from the user or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't use some matrix factorization or other techniques.
Of course, we have the 1000 features contains multiple matrix factorizations and so on.
So you use multiple techniques and then
and then combine them in CAN-boost.
These convolutional layers you train independently of your main model with all this matrix factorization?
But it's much more slower, and our matrix factorization train for a little bit one day. It's for 4 to 8 hours on our cloud, and training the neural network takes something about 2 days or 3 days. So if we contain it, we gradually lower the speed of our recommendations in offline, so we can update vectors every week or so.
Have you tried asking cold start users to sing or hum their favorite tune?
Quite hard to understand. We want to do it in our other product called Alice. It's just an Alexa from the Amazon, and we want to make some things there.
Do you use some more sophisticated models that take into account the history of the user, maybe history-based models like attention?
So we try to use only simplest model possible to obtain the quite low latency in our responses. So no, we do not use any sophisticated method online. Here, of course, we can replace max pooling by some LSTM and so on, but it's not give us a lot of quality. Okay.
How many recommendations per second you have to generate?
About 1,000 recommendations per second. We have a lot of work on our backend to minimize this number, to cache everything we recommend for users. It's not called every time.
Do you have some graph database or graph data structure in your business logic?
Yes, of course. We have a lot of graphs in our data structure.
In the recommendation system?
In recommendation systems.
And you update the graph dynamically?
Sometimes yes. For the more important parts, that's novelties, we update this graph dynamically. Okay.
So for when you think about not items which are cool, but items which are already you have a lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have two ways to produce latent vectors for them, right? The normal collaborative way. You can also kind of use this mechanism to generate another set of vectors, right, for the same item.
Yeah.
How do these two compare with each other in terms of performance?
The question was if you would have a lot of vector representation, a lot of embedding for the track, how would you use them? Yeah?
How do they, if you were to use the content-based approach on the item for which you have a lot of data, how would this compare to just using the collaborative filtering, in terms of performance?
Then I understand right. You have a lot of embedding vectors for the track. For example, one from content-based, other one from collaborative filtering, and you combine them by using CAN-boost. You extracting all features from both of them, making it in parallel. That's the full latency of your answer would be lower, and then you would good. You have a very nice results. Okay. Any other questions?
So what is the latency goal?
Latency going on goal.
The target.
Target it's 200 milliseconds for answer. We have a little bigger, and we're working to make it lower. Okay. Okay, yeah.
What countries do you operate
We operate in countries in Russia, and it's countries nearby Russia. It's Kazakhstan, Belarus, Ukraine, and so on, and Israel. And we would, couple of days ago, maybe launching in Turkey.
But it sounds
Yes, yes.
So you have data for this?
As I talk today, for launching in new country, we should do something here, and of course we're using these models. Of course, in Russia we have some streams from Israel music too, but it's too low to use the regular methods, and these methods allows us to use these techniques to recommend music in Israel.
You work mostly with local partners, or Daniil from Turkey, you work with Doğan Media. Doğan Holding is your local partner.
Oh, it's not question for me. It's question maybe for our PR manager. Yeah, I don't know a lot of that. I know that there was a lunch award. I make some things for this, but not PR.
No, not here. Like for the data processing, because in Turkey, a local team work is Yeah, it's the same for the whole country. That you always mostly outsource from the local partners, or you have your own core team?
Yes, we have core team that's placed in Moscow, and we are working on their full recommendation engines. We are all sitting in Moscow.
Everything is centralized.
Yes, everything. It's it's much simpler to work together in one town and have a spread command from multiple places. Of course, we have editors, not for that programs. That's not important where he or she sitting. But editors we have in countries. And in Israel we have 2 editors. Okay, questions? Oh, so let's finish by that then. You can ask your questions personally. I would be here for a couple of minutes. So let's finish.